Hey everyone, it's Scott Hansen from NFL Red Zone reminding you to watch Sports Ballers, the podcast that gets you caught up on everything Washington sports and beyond.
Welcome into the Sports Ballers podcast, episode 205. My name is Corey Puffett. For those of you who don't know, I'm joined as always by Eric and Evan. How are you guys doing on this
doing good
National Roller Coaster Day?
Yes, it is National Roller Coaster Day. Doing well. How about yourself?
I'm doing very well today. Got some fun topics to get through today. And I'm sure we'll hear about the latest roller coaster adventure that Evan and Eric took this past weekend down to Tampa, Florida. But before we get to that, this week I want to start with the NFL, and I want to start with the Commanders. We don't talk about the Commanders a whole lot on this show anymore because Eric and I have given up on our fandom of Washington. And we have no regrets. We have had no regrets since then, and we continue to have no regrets. And this week, we feel especially unregretful about that decision to give them up.
Yeah, it's not me, it's you. That's definitely the case here. Are you kidding me with everything?
So, talking about the Commanders, we're not really talking about the on-field product, which, leaves a lot to be desired when Carson Wentz appears to be on track to be your starting quarterback. But they debuted their new, and I'm putting air quotes around new, fight song this week. And my God, they swung and missed big time. I don't even know what I was listening to. They basically recycled the old Hail to the Redskins song. And now it's Hail to the Commander. Like, they slowed it down. They just changed the words out. Like, nobody's going for this.
Are they actually going to perform it like that? Like, that's the standard? Or are they going
I don't know if it's always going to be slow like that. Maybe they'll have a more up-tempo version for after
it sounds like a funeral.
Scores. But the point is, it's just recycled garbage. Like, you're using the same old song. People are just going to sing the same old song.
Yeah, it's buns. There's no other way to put it. And when we found out that they were changing the song, like I think it was about a month ago, they put it on social media and said, well, we got like 3 choices for how we can recycle the old song and put Commanders in there instead of the slur. And I was like, why are you doing that? It doesn't make any sense. Like, not only is it stupid in the sense of just either get a new song or don't have a song, whatever.
It's also a different number of syllables. Like,
yes,
it doesn't flow properly.
The entire cadence at that point. It's not the same song. It's not the same team name. So do something else. Like, this is ridiculous. And we talked about this on the chat. A slightly more serious issue with it is the fact that the fans are just going to sing the original song. So the entire point of not having your team called a slur is so that people stop using it. And
part of the point of not continuing to be the Washington football team and actually picking a mascot is because people were still using the slur to talk about the team when it was just the football team. They don't really have a nickname, so we're just going to use the old nickname. Mm-hmm. Now you have a new crappy nickname, but like, don't encourage people to then go back to the, like, what are you even doing?
And just F for creativity here. Like, this is lame. Like, you had a whole opportunity to rebrand this thing and sell merch, and
I think we need to invent a letter that goes below an F for this.
An F minus.
I'll go for that. That's
whatever
fun too.
You need to do, or like in the Harry Potter world, the worst grade you can get is a T for troll. So that this might be a T. It might actually just be a troll too. Like, this is so bad that it doesn't seem like it's a serious effort. Like, I can't believe that this was a genuine attempt to do
can. It's perfectly on brand. I mean, think about the effort that they put into Sean Taylor's number retirement that basically is the thing that broke the camel's back for us.
Yeah, it's the reason we're not fans anymore. So, yeah.
This is exactly on brand when you take that into consideration.
I mean, I thoroughly enjoy making fun of the Commanders for stuff like this. Like this is why we got out and why I'm got no regrets at this point. Like that was people. Some people ask me, so what are you gonna do if they get good? I'm like, that's not gonna be a problem. Come on, man. Y'all are so naive to think that this team's ever going to be good. And
even if they do get good again, like I don't need to jump back on a band. Like I kind of stopped following the Nationals before they went on their World Series run. I didn't jump back on the bandwagon for that. I was like, oh, cool. I mean, happy for the players.
I did not think it was cool.
But I really don't care. Like it doesn't do anything for me anymore. And the same thing would happen if Washington was to get good, which is unlikely as long as Dan Snyder is the owner. And to be fair, like if Dan Snyder was not still the owner, I wouldn't just jump right back, but I would be willing to consider returning to Washington as my team. I would be willing to consider it. There would need to be more changes other than just the ownership. But as long as Dan Snyder is the owner, I really don't care what they change within the organization. I am so anti-Dan Snyder at this point that there's no way that I could support a team that he is in any way currently associated with.
No, he tarnishes anything that changes within the organization anyway. So the change either doesn't last, or it's not authentic, or there is just simply no change. So, and the thing is, we follow football so closely on a national level around the entire league that I don't need to root for a team. I root for the Saints, but I could get by as a football fan if I didn't root for anybody. I just enjoyed good football.
Just fine like that.
Yeah, exactly. So it's not like it really hurts your feelings where it's like, I got nobody. I kind of feel the same way about the NBA because it's just, you want to see the best players. You'll tune in for the playoffs. You'll tune in for the marquee games to see the guys you want to see, even if they're not playing in your hometown. Whereas like other sports, you kind of need your hometown team, like baseball and hockey. Like it feels like you kind of have to have. You got to root for somebody because there's so many games, and it's so hard to care when you don't have a rooting interest for a specific team-based outcome. So but football, you don't need that, and I'm just gonna sit back and enjoy the view from afar, specifically when everything's on fire, and that's basically what it is right now for the team that plays their games over in Raljon. So. I'm enjoying it.
So let's talk about the other local team, Evans Ravens, who recorded their 21st consecutive preseason win this past week against the Titans. They won 23-10, a stat that does not matter at all, but that's still kind of impressive. I mean, that's more than 5 years of not losing in the preseason. So, it's neat.
Oh, yeah.
Ravens have some depth.
They didn't have any preseason games in 2020, so that, extended the streak by a year. Didn't lose any of those. It means nothing. It's only remarkable because there's been so many, but I vaguely remember there was a couple of the games that ended on like a failed 2-point conversion by the other team, and the Ravens won by 1 as time expired. So, stuff like that. But it doesn't matter.
You just want to put it in there. That's fine.
Yeah, it's just nice to win.
We can shout out your team a little bit.
I want to win.
Yeah. So Ravens' next preseason game is going to be Sunday night on Fox as they play in Arizona. Marcus Peters and J.K. Dobbins return to practice for the first time since suffering ACL injuries last preseason. That's a big deal for both sides of the ball with the Ravens. Why don't you talk a little bit about what those two players mean to your team, Evan?
Oh, my goodness. I mean, you don't appreciate something until it's gone, right? So, these guys were out the whole year, and their 2 units really suffered. The whole running back room got injured before week 1 last season.
Yeah, but you guys lost Gus Edwards, too.
Yeah, Gus Edwards, he's coming back from an ACL. And Justice Hill was coming back from an Achilles. So, there was no juice from the running backs, right? It was some of the really good running backs from 2013 or something. So, everybody's all old and slow and has no idea what they're supposed to be doing. So, I think
they've been around long enough. They know what they're supposed to be doing. They just aren't physically capable of doing it anymore.
Yeah, no, there's no juice. Nobody had any juice. And then on the defensive side of the ball, the whole secondary, you really can't have enough corners. And Ravens proved that last year. On Friday, December 24th, they signed some corners off the street, And then on Sunday, December 26th, they started against the Bengals. And that went how you would expect.
Joe Burrow threw for 400 yards twice against your team last year.
Yes, I'm aware. I paid money to see that one time. It's not fun. So, just really glad to have these guys back in practice. They're key members of our team. And, I just really want to get to week 1 healthy. Speaking of week 1, Lamar set a deadline for his contract negotiations to be over by week 1. We'll see what happens. I don't know. I mean, it would be, if Lamar's not on this team next season, it would be the greatest failure in the history of the universe. Like, you can't let this guy leave. I don't care if the other 52 guys all leave. You can't let Lamar leave. He's the franchise.
This would probably be worse than Aaron Judge not being re-signed by the Yankees, because
it would be
Lamar
times
is much
worse.
younger. He's got a longer career ahead of him.
I think he's also better than Aaron Judge at his sport. Like, he has more of an impact on his team's success.
That's definitely
true. I mean, that's true just because, it's a quarterback.
Yeah, versus
I mean, that much is fair for sure.
But, like, you can't let this guy leave. I'm sorry. I don't care how much it costs. However much money he wants. Give him 10 times that. He has to stay. So we'll see what happens. I'm confident they'll get a deal done. Particularly now that there's a deadline, that'll light a fire underneath some people.
Well, the thing is, though, what would stop the Ravens from franchise tagging him next offseason?
Nothing. They can absolutely do that. It's going to be more expensive, but they can for sure do that.
Well, it'll be more expensive, and it'll also probably piss him off and more likely result in him eventually leaving the next couple of years. But so yeah, I don't think there's any chance that Lamar's not playing for the Ravens in 2023. So I don't think you have anything to worry about, but I agree this entire process seemingly has been dragged out too long, and I think all parties take some blame. I think the fact that Lamar doesn't have like a true professional agent, we've talked about this on here, that sort of delays the process, because Lamar, since he's kind of his own agent, I know his mom is helping and stuff like that, but since Lamar is effectively acting as his own representation, he has to be in the room a lot more than he normally would be. And considering the fact that he gets paid to play football, not to negotiate deals, that probably slows the process down, because, frankly, no shade to him, but he doesn't know what he's doing. And no NFL player, nobody that's not an agent knows what they're doing, because there's a reason those guys get paid. Never underestimate the value of professionalism.
Yeah. Alex Mayo's listening. He brought up Soto and the 2.5 years of arbitration that he had left when the Nationals shipped him out. So...
But the Ravens aren't as stupid as the Nationals, stuff.
They have not been in their past. That is for sure. So you would hope that
therein lies the difference.
Yes, you would hope so. One other thing on the NFL, obviously, we're in the middle of preseason, and so there's stuff going on all over the league. And if you haven't watched Hard Knocks, you should definitely watch the first episode of that. It's on HBO Max. It was really good. It was cool seeing like all of the former players that we grew up watching, quite a few of them who are now on Dan Campbell's staff with the Lions. Antoine Randall is coaching with them. Mark Brunell is coaching with them. Yeah, I mean, who was it? Deuce Staley is coaching with them.
Can they spell chrysanthemum yet?
Probably not. I don't think I can spell chrysanthemum. I can barely pronounce it. But like that was really cool, and you see Dan Campbell actually like doing up downs with the team. I still don't know how what my opinion of Dan Campbell is as a coach, but as a person, I really like him. And this, the first episode of Hard Knocks, if anything, supported that opinion that I like the dude. He seems genuine. He seems like a good dude who has the respect of his players and his coaching staff. So. Hopefully the Lions can turn things around. I'd love to see him have success with them. And, the Lions, God knows the Lions fans deserve a little bit of something to be happy about. They haven't since like the 50s. But the big other story was Zach Wilson this week, who everybody and their mother thought he had suffered an ACL tear. All over Twitter, everybody was like, oh, man, you feel terrible for Zach Wilson. He's lost his season. But it turns out that he may have avoided catastrophe. It was not nearly as significant an injury as they thought it would be, and there's still hope that he could be starting week 1 for the Jets.
Yeah, this is what happens when people on Twitter play doctor from some camera angle where they say, "Oh, that's definitely an ACL because I've seen that happen a million times." I'm like, "No, you haven't. You don't know anything. You know, you're just some guy, just like the rest of us." But at the same time, we understand non-contact injuries are always troublesome.
Yeah.
Like when you see somebody just
sometimes the worst injuries are non-contact.
They usually
ones.
are. I mean, that's like what could go wrong when nobody's hitting you is exactly the type of thing that ends your season. So, good news from that standpoint. I mean, we talked about Zach Wilson last year quite a bit for his rookie struggles, but every rookie quarterback, except for like Mac Jones, had a really rough season. And there was some optimism with the Jets this year. They did a really good job in the draft. Their team actually looks like it's on the up and up.
I'm really excited to see what they do this year.
Yeah, I mean, I still think they're probably fit for 4th place just because the division's pretty tough with the Bills being great. I think the Dolphins are going to be pretty good, and the Patriots are never going to be really, really bad. So, so it might still be a 4th place season, but
they could, they could be 4th place and be like a game or 2 below 500. That would be a decent season for the Jets.
Yeah, the point is you could flash, like you could show signs that your team is improving, and we know how the NFL works. The Bills aren't going to be good forever, even with Josh Allen at quarterback. The rest of the roster is going to move in and out. The Dolphins still have a lot of question marks about them, and nobody knows what the hell is going on with the Patriots right now. So if they can slide into a window for 3 or 4 years and Zach Wilson proves to be the real deal, they might have a shot to actually do something interesting for the first time in over a decade. So, obviously,
I think the last time they won the division, Chad Pennington was their quarterback, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, and the reason why I say over a decade is the fact that they did play in 2 straight AFC Championship games. Like that's something. It's not. It's not like I'm not saying they won the Super Bowl.
They did it with Mark Sanchez.
Yes, they did it with Mark Sanchez, and he won 4 straight road playoff, or not 4 straight, but 4 road playoff games in 2 seasons, which is just the biggest anomaly of all time because Mark Sanchez sucked. But he was good enough, I guess, those games. But obviously, everything that the Jets do is predicated on 1, how good is Zach Wilson, and 2, can he stay on the field?
Yeah. Let's talk some college football. The preseason top 25 was announced this week. The top 10 teams in the preseason poll, there's no surprise really at the top with Alabama taking the 1 spot. Ohio State's number 2, Georgia's 3, Clemson is 4, Notre Dame is 5. After that, you kind of get to the other teams that sort of round out that top tier. So you got Texas A&M, Utah, Michigan, Oklahoma, and Baylor taking the 6 through 10 spots. We won't go through the whole top 25 list, but the major conferences, the only other Big Ten team is number 18, Wisconsin. Meanwhile, the SEC has 3 other teams, 19, 20, and 21 are Arkansas, Kentucky, and Ole Miss. Maybe a little bit surprising to see Kentucky up there because they're not a football school, as John Calipari very bluntly put it this week, saying that this is a basketball school.
But they've been good for the last couple of years.
Yeah, Kentucky is the main team, the main school that could beat Georgia for the East. It's not going to happen, but
could beat is doing a lot of heavy lifting there.
They're the second best.
They're the second best team, but it's a pretty big gap from 1 to 2.
Yeah.
And then the ACC has 4 more teams. So number 13, NC State, number 16, Miami, number 17, Pitt, and number 22, Wake Forest. Eric's and my Terps are not on that list.
Didn't get any votes either.
Evan's Yellow Jackets, not on that list.
They're gonna be
I
terrible.
looked for us on the list. We're not there. It's surprising.
I combed the list. I kind of just passed the top 25 because I didn't think the Terps were going to be in there. But I was curious to see if they got any votes because, I think...
Tagovailoa is coming back again.
Yeah, I think the team's going to be pretty good. Like, I don't think they're going to blow your mind and go 8-4 or something like that, which is kind of a sad state of affairs that 8-4 would blow people's minds. But I think there's a very good chance they could be a bowl team again.
When you only have to go 500,
When you have to play Michigan State, Penn State, Michigan, Ohio State every year, it can be a little dicey. But I do think that their Big Ten West schedule is a little bit easier this year. Like, they got some breaks there, so definitely some winnable games on the schedule for Maryland.
Okay. Nothing really doing with college basketball. We can talk some professional basketball because they released part of their schedule this week, and I believe the rest of their schedule is going to publish tomorrow. It's interesting because Alex Mayo was talking about Maryland. He said a couple analysts are big on Leah and the wide receiver core. I'm assuming Leah is Talia. Yeah.
And the wide receiver
I didn't
core
realize that
is
people
pretty
shortened his
good.
name, but yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that's one thing that Maryland has done a pretty good job over the past 4 or 5 years at least is they get some pretty good wide receivers in the room. They had DJ Turner and they've had some other good wide receivers over the past
DJ
several
Moore
years.
too.
That's right. Yeah, DJ Moore was a Terp.
Yeah, and Raheem Jarrett looks like he's the real deal. He'll probably be playing on Sundays sometime soon. So, yeah, definitely a lot of good offensive talent, and Mike Loxley's always been a guy that could recruit offense. It's just a question of discipline and defense and staying healthy, of course. Like last year, I feel like Maryland had chances to maybe win some bigger games, but some injuries derailed that. And if they could stay healthy this year, who knows? Maybe they'll eke out a couple more wins than expected.
Okay. So let's jump back over to the NBA. I believe the rest of the schedule is dropping tomorrow. Not really sure why basketball or any league for that matter makes such a big deal over the schedule release. Like nobody is going on to their calendar and be like, okay, like this day I absolutely have to be in front of my TV screen. Like,
I mean, there's days where I'm automatically going to be in front of my TV screen, like the opening night and on Christmas, because.
Well, sure, but like specifically when the Wizards play the Grizzlies, who cares?
Yeah, like it doesn't
Why
really
does that
matter.
matter?
And they do this more with the NFL, and it drives me crazy.
I don't even think that the NFL needs to be doing all
No,
that.
like,
I don't care what. Like we already know which teams,
and where
each
they're
team's
going to
playing
play,
and where they're going to play. So like.
Just arranging them.
I'm going to be in front of my TV every Sunday anyway.
Yeah, every football Sunday and Monday Night Football game and Saturday games and Thursday games. They're all events. So you're not going to miss any of those.
No.
Just by the nature of the fact that you like football. So you don't need to encourage me to turn on Red Zone or to watch Sunday Night Football at all. Like that's not necessary. But basketball has some marquee days on the schedule, and I don't know if it was leaked or they just released it early about opening night and Christmas games, but I just felt like it was something to talk about.
Yeah, so we do have the opening night. You're going to see both teams that made the finals this past year. The Celtics will play the 76ers and the Warriors will play the Lakers. Kind of makes sense that those would be the matchups, kind of the rivalries, not to mention, the Lakers, maybe will be better this year. We'll see. You never really know for sure.
Or for them to be worse.
It has not been very good since the bubble. But they could bounce back.
Their team looks terrible. Like their team looks absolutely horrendous. I mean, they've got.
I'm trying to be nice here, Eric.
I'm not.
The Lakers stink. Somebody's got to say it.
Well, I think everybody's going to say it, especially after opening night. I mean, this feels like a sacrificial lamb situation where it's like somebody's got to play the Warriors on ring night and. They picked the Lakers because last year the Lakers and the Warriors played. I don't recall if that was the opening night or if that was just like one of the first early. That was like the first game for both teams was Lakers Warriors in what was formerly called the Staples Center, and I think everybody was like, "Oh, the Lakers are gonna win that one." They didn't, and your boy had that one, and I don't think they're gonna win this one unless I don't know if the league is anticipating potential trades because we know. That Kyrie Irving is still in the mix as a trade piece. Kevin Durant. I don't think Kevin Durant's likely to go to the Lakers, but Kyrie Irving could. And while I don't think that makes the Lakers a championship contender, it certainly makes them better if they replace Russell Westbrook with Kyrie Irving. And presuming Kyrie Irving actually shows up to work, that is a better team than the one that we saw last year.
Yeah, and then as far as the 76ers, a lot of analysts think that they could be poised to make a deep playoff run. They made some moves in the offseason. I'd like to get your thoughts on that, Eric. Like, could this be a conference championship preview?
It's possible, but I feel like the Bucks still have to throw their hat in the ring. I mean, it really depends on how the bracket unfolds because I thought last year the two best teams in the East were the Bucks and the Celtics, but they ended up being the 2 and the 3 seed. They played in the second round. So in that way, it could be possible that the Sixers end up making the conference finals, by way of maybe they grab the top seed, maybe there's some injuries that cause the Celtics or the Bucks to lose more games than they normally would have. So it's definitely a playoff potential preview. The Sixers are interesting because they re-signed James Harden. He worked his deal so that the team will have more flexibility to make the rest of their roster better. They've obviously still got Joel Embiid, who's great, and at the peak of his powers right now. And Tyrese Maxey is budding into a star. And they've still got Tobias Harris. So, I mean, they've got the pieces. It just feels like every year something goes wrong with the Sixers, whether it's Ben Simmons not laying the ball in and, kicking it to Matisse Thybulle for when he had a chance to just dunk on Trae Young. But if you recall, because I do, the reason why they lost that series to the Hawks wasn't strictly because Ben Simmons turned into a pumpkin. It was also because Joel Embiid was playing on a torn meniscus. He wasn't 100%. If Embiid was playing at the level that we've been accustomed to seeing him play, they win that series anyway. And then they take on the Bucks, and who knows what happens in that conference finals in 2021. And then last year, they played the Heat, but Embiid missed the first 2 games with a broken face. He was never really able to get back on the court and be 100%. That being said, they did fight and make it a six-game series, even with Embiid basically costing them the first 2 games with his absence. So they realistically could beat just about anybody in the East. They could certainly take Boston. They could definitely take the Heat. The Bucks, we'll see, but they're right there in the mix. This is definitely an exciting matchup, and the Sixers have to be feeling like it's time because they've spent so many years saying, okay, now we're going for it. Now we're trying to build a champion, and they haven't been able to get out of the second round. This year it feels like they need to do it, or else people are going to have to update their resumes for sure.
Okay. One of the really interesting stories out of what has been released so far is that the NBA has not scheduled any games for Election Day on November 8th. This is I guess the first time that they're not playing on Election Day. They usually just have games on that day.
Yeah.
Not like, it's not like it's a big thing like they're trying to make sure we get marquee games like we do for opening day or for Christmas Day. But they usually don't avoid Election Day. This year they are, as a part of the league's focus to promote nonpartisan civic engagement, encourage fans and players to vote. So I love that. I think that's good. I mean, I think Election Day should be a federal holiday. That's our fundamental right as Americans is that we get to vote. We should be making sure that everybody can vote. It should be a holiday where people can do that. So
that makes
like
too much sense, Corey. We can't have that.
It does make too much sense. But the other big day that they released the schedule for is Christmas Day. Boston will play on Christmas Day, as will the Warriors, so they both get Christmas and opening day games. The Warriors will play the Grizzlies, so that'll be interesting. John Morant, and that was a playoff matchup this past year. The Celtics will play the Bucks. They played in the playoffs this past year, and as Eric just said, the Bucks would probably be the other team he would put ahead of the 76ers in terms of most likely to make it into the Eastern Conference Final. The other games will be the Knicks and the 76ers, the Nuggets and the Suns, and the Mavericks and the Lakers. So really all 4 teams that are playing on opening day also get to play on Christmas.
The insistence of putting the Knicks on Christmas just drives me absolutely nuts. I mean,
it's just nauseating.
Why? All of the other teams on this list are, regular playoff teams. The Lakers didn't make the playoffs this past year, but usually you figure that they're going to be in the mix.
Well, the Lakers have LeBron James.
And they have LeBron James. The Knicks don't really have that marquee player, and they've been very up and down recently. More down.
When were they up?
They were terrible.
They were up a couple years ago. They had a pretty solid year.
They made the playoffs and got walked out of there by the Hawks.
They did,
right?
but they made the playoffs.
Yeah.
There was that. But they have been mostly down.
This feels like a slap in the face to the Miami Heat. They were a Jimmy Butler 3 away from potentially going to the finals. They're a perennial playoff team. They've got star power. They've got Jimmy Butler. They've got Bam Adebayo. They've got Pat Riley basically running the show. They are a staple of the modern day NBA. They should absolutely be playing on Christmas. Them versus the Sixers would be a really compelling matchup. Again, playoff rematch from the second round. 2 teams that figure to be in the mix for the Eastern Conference. Why are the Knicks here? And so the Suns and the Nuggets, again, makes sense. Suns won 64 games last year, had a disappointing playoff run, but they were in the finals
best
the year
team
before.
in basketball during the regular season as far as win total.
Yeah, and the Nuggets, while they didn't have the great season, they have the 2-time reigning MVP, and presumably will have Jamal Murray and Michael Porter Jr. back.
Yeah.
They figure to be a team that
is very dangerous in the West.
Yeah, like they should feel like a team that could win the Western Conference. So everybody out there makes sense from a star power perspective at the very least, if not also being a team that figures to contend in the NBA, except for the Knicks. Like, why are you here?
Yeah, so the Heat, I guess, got kind of thrown a bone because the NBA also announced their Martin Luther King Jr. Day schedule, and that's going to be Atlanta against Miami and Memphis against Phoenix. So the Heat get a I guess sort of special day game, but it's just interesting that they weren't on Christmas. I mean, the Suns get to play on both Christmas and MLK Jr. Day.
Yeah, Christmas is always the big day,
and the Grizzlies,
because you got 10 teams and. Usually, like, it would be insulting for a guy who's a top 5 player in the league to not be playing on Christmas. And the thing is, another conspicuously absent team is the Brooklyn Nets, because nobody knows who the hell is going to be on that team, so they're certainly not going to intentionally schedule them knowing damn well that KD could be playing on any number of teams that aren't the Nets by the time we get to Christmas.
One other piece of news from the NBA this past week, the NBA on Thursday, a couple days after we recorded episode 204, they retired Bill Russell's number. We spent a little bit of time last week talking about Bill Russell's legacy, what he meant to us as basketball fans, what he meant to the players in the league, and to a lot of people around the country, including people who are not basketball fans. His civil rights activism, his performances as a player and a coach in the NBA. I think that this is really good that the NBA is doing this. I think that's the right move. They are grandfathering in current players who wear the number 6. And if those players were to change teams, they can continue to wear 6 for those teams unless that team had already retired the number. But whenever that last person wearing it retires, that will be it. Basically the same thing that happened when Major League Baseball retired Jackie Robinson's number. So I like that the NBA is doing that. Let's go ahead and talk some baseball. It's been a little while since we have done a standings update, so we're going to get into that in just a few minutes. But we're going to start and quickly get through my Yankees. I'm hosting this week, but I really don't want to talk about the Yankees today. So thankfully, Eric has a bit of a writing diary of the Yankees' ineptitude from this past week, and in particular last Tuesday night.
Yes, we had an experience.
Yes, it was not a pleasant one.
No.
As two Orioles fans who typically love to see the Yankees lose, but in this particular situation, we kind of need the Yankees to win because they're playing the Seattle Mariners. The Mariners in the wild card chase. It was a 0-0 game. The game goes to extra innings. And so Andrew Benintendi made the last out of the 9th inning for the Yankees in pathetic fashion. He just watched a couple fastballs go by and took a seat. Glad we traded for him. So that means that he ended up being the guy that goes out to second base as the automatic runner in extra innings. So I forget who came up first for the Yankees. It might have been Josh Donaldson. But he draws a walk, so now it's first and second with no outs. The Yankees are looking like they're in a good position to score multiple runs, which is critical in extras because when the other team gets their automatic runner, it's kind of hard to expect to stop them from scoring.
Yeah.
So then things get a little hairy when Benintendi leaves early on a double steal attempt, and he gets picked off, and that's the end of that rally. The Yankees fail to score. And then somehow the Mariners don't answer with any runs. So we go on to the 11th inning. The last out of the previous inning was, is it Miguel Andujar? Michael Andujar?
Yeah, Miguel Andujar.
Yeah. So he goes out to second base, and then he sits there and gets doubled off of second base on a line drive by Aaron Hicks, which, by the way, was not a smoked line drive. It was a weakly hit quail, and he literally paused, watched the play happen, and then decided to try to go towards third base while the ball was in the process of being caught, and he gets doubled off. I've never seen this. This is a product of the rule itself. The Yankees had 2 batters come to the plate that inning because the automatic runner was doubled off. So 2 batters came to the inning, came to the plate that inning. That being said,
That's amazing.
once again, the Mariners failed to score.
They did.
So we went to the 12th inning. And
surely the Yankees are going to score this time.
no. Isaiah Kiner-Falefa comes to the plate, and he hits a solidly hit ground ball, but the pitcher scoops it. So the runner on second gets caught in no man's land and is basically caught between the bags and gets thrown out. But what made the play so much worse was the fact that Kiner-Falefa decided he was going to try to advance while the rundown was happening. The problem is the rundown didn't last very long, and so he ended up getting hung up and getting tagged out at second. So he grounded into a double play, which meant for the second straight inning, the New York Yankees would send 2 batters to the plate. Yeah. Unbelievable. You had 7 batters come to the plate in 3 full innings of extras. Yeah. That being said, baseball. The Mariners failed to score in the 12th, so we went to the 13th. And finally, the whole time I was just saying, can y'all just get Aaron Judge to the plate so maybe he could do something? Unfortunately, Aaron Judge was the leadoff guy the following inning, and so naturally the Mariners just walked him. They put him on base intentionally. Andrew Benintendi comes to the plate again. He watches strike 3 go by, kind of shakes his head like a dope, acting like it was a bad call when it was
right down the middle,
well inside the strike zone. So he had to go chilling. Gleyber Torres comes to the plate. The pitcher can't find the strike zone to save his life at this point, and yet he decides to swing at a 1-0 pitch that's all the way in his eyes, and he eventually gets struck out on a pretty bad slider that never was even in the strike zone. Like, he waved at it like he was trying to hit a fly or something with a crowbar. It was the most pathetic swing I saw the entire game, and there were quite a few of them, obviously, in a game where nobody's scoring any runs. So he strikes out, and then Andujar comes to the plate and flails at 3 straight pitches and grounds out weakly to shortstop to end the inning. And so then the Mariners come to the plate, and they get a knock, but they've seen all these toot blands that the Yankees have been racking up, so they decide we're not going to send the guy on Aaron Judge because Aaron Judge has a hose. So they leave him at third base, and eventually they score the winning run because they didn't just say, hey, let's chase the win right now. And they got it done, and the Yankees lost 1-0 in 13 innings.
At 2:30 in the morning.
Yes, I wanted to watch 2 episodes of Banshee, but I instead watched this game last until 2:30 in the morning, and I'm upset because I wasted my time, but I made sure to take copious notes of all the nonsense that happened labeled Yankees debacle right here on my phone. Dear Lord.
It was quite a debacle. The whole week has been a debacle. The whole
Did you
past
see Aaron
month
Hicks?
and change has been a debacle.
Did you see Aaron Hicks yesterday fail to do anything resembling catching a fly ball?
What was that? I mean, Joey Rickard never did that.
Joey Rickard
was
And
bad
he had
enough.
no
Shame
idea
of
what the ball was.
It's been bad enough that the past month and a half, our bullpen has been trash. It has been garbage. They cannot say they can't nail down a save to save their lives. Every single day, it's like blown save, blown save, blown save. I think Andrew finally took Clay Holmes out of his lineup for fantasy because I recorded 7 blown saves by him in 10 or 11 days. It's ridiculous.
Keep your job.
How is he even still in the league? Makes no sense.
Yeah, so
I'm a sad panda this week.
So to add a little more flavor to your misery, the Rays are up 3-0 on the Yankees right now.
Of course they are. That wasn't even the Yankees' only shutout this past week. They've been shut out 4 or 5 times this season.
Yeah, they got shut out yesterday in Cole's start.
I think the last time they had been shut out before the season was 3 years ago.
They haven't scored a run since Saturday.
Yikes.
They've played every day. They shut out on Sunday, shut out last night.
And currently getting shut out through 4 innings, 3 1/3 innings. So yeah.
It's bad. So let's talk about something that's a little bit less bad. Your guys, Orioles, they're
Somehow
3-3.
we're better than you guys right now.
They are 3-3 since our last show. They did have a disappointing series against Tampa Bay, though. I'm sure we'll get into that a little bit more later when Eric and Evan talk about their trip down to Tampa. But let's talk about DL Hall, his debut, what your guys' impressions of him were, and also the, in my opinion, bad management to have Adley Rutschman catch the night before. If playing a mid-afternoon game the next day was going to be too soon for him to catch DL Hall's debut. You would think that you'd want your young superstar catcher and your young, hopefully superstar pitcher to be playing together the first time that DL Hall is pitching in a major league game.
Especially given the fact that they came up together in the minor leagues.
Yeah.
Right.
So
Yeah, that was
I
an
don't know what
egregious
that
oversight.
decision was, but let's focus more on just DL Hall's debut. What did you guys think?
He was electric, man. When he could find home plate, he was unhittable. But he just ran it. His issue was he couldn't throw strike one. Like he got behind every single guy. It seemed like, and the first 5 pitches he threw were balls. So he had a couple leadoff walks. Both of those guys came around to score. So he still seems kind of green. He's got a lot of stuff to work on, but there's no shortage of talent either. And I think he's got the right mental makeup as well. He seems like a grinder. So I'm glad he's on our team or in our organization, but he's just got a lot of stuff to work on, which is fine because he's 23 years old or something.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, we watched him warm up because the bullpen was right where we were sitting down the left field line. And just initially, obviously we're seated up and we've got a sort of a horizontal view of him. But I could tell instantly that he didn't have great command. I could tell that he was probably a little amped up because it was his first start. But obviously, when you're sitting up there, it's hard to tell how good is the stuff. Mm-hmm. Like you could obviously see the fastball, and you could generally tell that thing's coming in pretty hot. But from what I knew about him and based off of his profile in the minor leagues, he was clearly a guy that was going to miss a lot of bats. Like he's got 3 or 4 good, reliable pitches that he can get swings and misses with. But like Evan said, came out right away, was all over the map with his fastball. Actually relied on his off-speed pitches to get him out of trouble a lot. And, he ran into a little bit of bad luck, too. Like, the contact that he gave up was generally pretty weak, but some of those still went for hits. And some of those were poor defensive efforts by Ryan Mountcastle and Anthony Santander in left field. So there is certainly a little bit of concern that still exists about his command issues, something that he's definitely going to have to work on. But it was good to see him get a shot. I think that the situation wasn't ideal. You're going up against the Rays in what is shockingly a critical game for the Orioles, given the fact that they and the Rays are competing for wild card positioning. And the season series came down to the outcome of this series, which could affect tiebreakers. And you put a rookie on the mound in his Major League debut up against Shane McClanahan, who might win the American League Cy Young. And you also don't supply him the best possible lineup out there to give him support. You don't put Adley Rutschman behind the plate. You don't have your best defensive units out there. And it showed at times that he wasn't going to get the help that he needed, especially given the fact that he was dealing with some of those first game jitters and some of those command issues. But I think that the team let him down a little bit. And I think that it's going to be interesting to see how things go for him when he's called back up, because he was immediately sent back down to start preparing to become a bullpen-related pitcher for the stretch run, because that's how the Orioles plan to use him for the rest of 2022. I guess they just wanted to get that first game out of the way with, so that his first appearance isn't in some high-leverage situation in September where he could potentially blow the game. But I still think it could have been handled better. Nevertheless, I was thrilled to find out. We were standing in line for Iron Gwazi, and I tell Evan, DL Hall's pitching tomorrow. Like, he's coming up, and he's going to start tomorrow, and we're going to be there to see it. I was part excited, part nervous for him, and understandably so, given the way things went down.
So we'll get to more of that in a minute, but you mentioned the poor defensive efforts by Santander and Mountcastle. The one good thing is that at least Ryan Mountcastle seems to be hitting his way out of that slump that he was in for the good part of the month. I think he hit 2 home runs in one game this past week.
No, he's hit a couple of home runs, but he hit a 2-run jack
Just
yesterday. And, obviously, he actually drew, 2 walks, too, which is crazy. He never does that. He had a power outage for a long time. I think he went probably 5 weeks without hitting a home run, and that's why he's in the lineup, is to hit homers. He hit 35 last year, so he certainly is capable of hitting the ball a long way. I mean,
he just hadn't been doing it.
Yeah, and the thing is, he's a young player. He's got a history of lacking plate discipline, and it feels like if you start pressing because things aren't going well, you might get some of those bad habits and start hacking at really bad pitches again. And I think that sort of is where he ended up regressing to for a while. But it seems like he's at least got his swing back. He's starting to feel it a little bit. Hopefully that continues and he finishes the season strong.
So the Orioles have announced that their plan for this offseason is to, quote, drastically increase the payroll. And somewhere Buster Olney is shouting expletives into the ether because he's going to have to find something new to rant about, because that seems to be 90% of what he writes, talks, and tweets about is the Orioles not spending money. And that may be going out the door.
Well, he found other reasons to whine about the Orioles this season when they started winning games. I mean, Jeff Passan had to check him and Carl Ravitch when they tried to compare the Orioles and the fact that they were not interested in buying at the deadline. They compared them to the 2019 Nats and the 2021 Braves, who neither team had particularly good records at that time. But Jeff Passan rightfully pointed out both of those teams came into the season as World Series contenders, teams that thought that they could win it all, and they slumped either due to injuries or just a slow start. They had every reason to go for it, whereas the Orioles are not a realistic threat to beat the Astros or the Yankees. Well, maybe the Yankees right now, given the way they're playing, but they're not a realistic threat to win the pennant. They're probably, even if they do grab a wild card spot, they're probably going to lose that first series. And frankly, it's not worth selling out potential future assets for this team, because the time for the Orioles to go for it is in the near future, not this year. This year is a pleasant surprise.
Yep.
Exactly.
So let's talk a little bit about your guys' bounce back. You guys had a kind of a rough series against the Rays, but you guys bounced back last night against Toronto. Y'all are playing up in Canada. You'll have another game against them tonight, but talk a little bit about yesterday.
Well, the bats showed up after almost getting perfectoed on Sunday against the Rays and not really having much offense on Saturday either. But, the Rays have probably better starting pitching for the most part, although Alek Manoah is pitching for the Blue Jays tonight, so it's going to be tough sledding for sure. I think the Orioles are currently down 2-0. But, so I don't really expect them to win tonight, given the pitching matchup is just not in the Orioles' favor at all.
No.
It rarely is.
It never is.
But usually it's at least somewhat close. Here it's an all-star level pitcher going up against Dean Kramer. So I think the odds on the game were Blue Jays minus 220 to win, and that's pretty steep for a baseball game, especially for teams with similar records. But in this case, it certainly was warranted. I was like, I don't think we're winning tonight. So hopefully they can get them tomorrow. Maybe they can pull something, pull a rabbit out of their head, to quote Jason Witten. But I don't think that I don't think it's happening tonight. But nevertheless, they played well yesterday. The bats showed up. They rocked Kikuchi for the second time in a week. That dude's struggling. He was a big free agent acquisition for the Blue Jays. He pitched great for the Mariners last year. He was on my fantasy team. I didn't realize he would actually be that good. But the Blue Jays went and got him. They almost swapped pitchers. Kikuchi went to the Blue Jays and Robbie Ray went to the Mariners. I think the Mariners got the better end of that deal.
Robbie Way.
Yeah. And so anyway, he got rocked. And the Orioles pitching did their job, I guess. Kyle Bradish. Is it Bradish or Bradish? I've heard of both.
Doesn't matter. He gets toasted every night.
Bradish.
he was seen as a potential pitching prospect for the Orioles, but I just don't know. I think he seems to struggle with some command issues as well, but he doesn't have the same stuff as DL Hall, and he's not nearly as green. He should be further along in his journey, if you will. You hope he could turn around. Sometimes he looks great. Like when he goes after people, he looks great. Like he pitched the game that Evan and I went to in Cincinnati, and there were a couple innings where he just boom, 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 quick outs, get out of the inning, go sit down. But other times he nibbles, he tries to get cute, he doesn't trust his stuff, and it seems to be a recurring problem for him. I don't know how for real he is, but he ended up getting through, I think, 5 innings last night. Gave up 3 runs. The last one was a dong to Vlad Guerrero, so he does that to a lot of people. But the Orioles won.
Guerrero has a home run tonight.
Yes, he does. So. But the Orioles ended up pulling away and putting them away. So
Alex will like that. He's got Vladimir Guerrero forever in his utility spot in our fantasy league. Let's talk a little bit about Chris Woodward. I have not really been following the Texas Rangers this year.
They're equally embarrassing.
So I'm going to need you guys to fill me in a little bit on this firing, what he did to deserve it, or if he did deserve it. I'm assuming he did.
He should have been fired 2 years ago.
Well, the Rangers have been terrible, and
yeah,
we referenced an incident on this show 2 years ago. He was managing the Rangers when Fernando Tatis Jr., who we will get to, decided to have the unmitigated gall to swing at a 3-0 pitch with the bases loaded.
So that was Chris Woodward.
And then he suddenly has his pitcher thrown behind Manny Machado. This guy's a clown, and he beclowned himself further this year when he was whining about Yankee Stadium's short porch in right field, which it is very short. It is the shortest of its kind, but the home runs that the Rangers were giving up were well into the seats in the right field. 30 out of 30 parks, those balls leave. So his complaints were completely unfounded, and he just looked like a big baby, which is what he's looked like the whole time. And the team sucks, so there you go.
Yes. And the Rangers spent like $500 million this past offseason to get Corey Seager and Marcus Semien. And like when the talent doesn't match the production, that's a leadership issue. So he's got to go. And that's a bummer for him. But, maybe in his free time now he'll learn about baseball.
Let's jump over to, speaking of Fernando Tatis Jr., Tatis got popped this week for PEDs. I believe he's claiming that he tested positive for PEDs because of a medication he was taking for, was it ringworm?
Ringworm,
yeah.
Which, maybe that's true, but come on. Like, we're at a point where enough athletes have tested positive for performance-enhancing drugs while claiming to take some sort of other medication for a different issue, that there is no excuse for not knowing what is in your medication and either finding an alternative with your doctor or getting approval from the league to be able to take this medication that you need to treat a particular ailment. Obviously, if that's the only treatment that he can take, he should be able to take that treatment and not be suspended by Major League Baseball. There should be some way that they can come to an agreement that he doesn't play for X number of days afterwards. He's not playing right now anyway. But whatever the reason is, like, I mean, it sucks because I like Fernando Tatis. He's a fun player to watch. And, baseball is less fun when he's not playing. But I also don't feel really any sympathy for him in this because you need to know what is going in your body. I don't care what it's for.
Fernando Tatis Jr. doesn't seem like he's that bright of a guy. He like the reason he's not going to play at all this season is his own stupidity. Right? Like, what are you doing riding a motorcycle when you're a professional athlete when your body and your physical well-being is your livelihood? You don't risk that by getting on a motorcycle. So there's one thing. And then now he's, he didn't, this medication apparently for ringworm, why didn't you get something that's like approved by the team or Major League Baseball or run it by somebody or something? Because it just looks bad on him. And, there's no excuse. He can say it was for ringworm, but the results are the results. It doesn't matter, man. And Fernando Tatis Jr., if he signed a 14-year deal for a whole bunch of money, you gotta be better than this. If this is year one and they get 0 out of you, years 2 to 14 better be better than this, because this is not good.
Well, and even more frustrating for the Padres, they just traded for Juan Soto, gave up some pretty good prospects for him, and they did that not in anticipation of Fernando Tatis not being there and so needing somebody else. They did that so that he could be a part of a lineup with Tatis and Manny Machado and Jake Cronenworth and that whole group of just stud hitters to potentially turn that team into a World Series contender. And now they're getting absolutely nothing out of a guy that is their best player when he's on the field. I mean, I can't undersell how good of a player Fernando Tatis is when he's actually on the field. He is absolutely tremendous. Yeah. 2 top 5 finishes in MVP voting in the weird 60-game season. And last year, he was a shoo-in to win it until he got hurt.
Yeah, I mean, what player are you going to put ahead of Fernando Tatis, particularly in the NL? Yeah, is there anybody?
Juan Soto is the closest
Juan Soto.
guy.
That's the only guy that you can really make a case for is Soto.
Yeah, and you could have had both of them in your lineup every night, along with Manny Machado, who is a future Hall of Famer.
Who's also really good.
Who's in his prime. So yeah, you could have had this unbelievable murderer's row lineup, and you were supposed to be the main part of it, and you ain't here. And it's entirely his fault. I don't buy the ringworm story at all, because you can treat ringworm with crap you buy from Target at $10, and it doesn't have anabolic steroids in it. So, that's not quite making it for me. I have to imagine that whatever he was taking, for whatever reason, was in order to try to aid his recovery process coming from his injury. That's usually the case when people take PEDs. It's not even so much about adding strength. It's more about get me back on the field quicker. And given the fact that he hasn't been on the field at all, that might have enticed him to do so. But you got to know the rules, and you got to follow the rules.
Yep.
Right? You are not in a situation where you can bargain with Major League Baseball on what you're allowed to put in your body. The CBA is the CBA. It says these things aren't allowed, so suck it up and find another way to get your supplements. But this is just simply an unacceptable outcome for somebody who his future is as bright as it could be. I mean, 23 years old, already a top 5 player in baseball, figured to have a chance to only get better. But, here we are. I mean, I talked about it in our fantasy football chat. I have not seen a precipitous decline in public perception and stature for a young player like this in just 365 days. Last year, he was the toast of the town at the All-Star game. Freddie Freeman's kid wanted a picture with him. He was a runaway favorite to win the MVP. He had to deal with that awkwardness of trying to talk to Joe Buck during the game on the microphones. But he was somehow still charming. And then he gets hurt. He re-aggravates that shoulder injury. He has to move to the outfield. He pouts a bit. The Padres collapse. They don't make the playoffs. He doesn't come into this year because of his motorcycle accident. Acts pretty flippant about that when they asked him, when did you injure it? He says, which motorcycle accident? This has happened more than once. And then it takes the process was supposed to be, he's supposed to be back around the All-Star break. For whatever reason, his fault or not, the rehab isn't going as planned, so it's taking a bit longer. And now he's out for 80 games due to using steroids. And his name is Mud. I mean, they've already sat there and pulled his bobblehead night off the shelf, basically. They've repurposed it to a Juan Soto Scherzi night in San Diego because they can't be giving out bobbleheads of suspended cheaters. That's simply not a good look. And they just got this new superstar, so they're going to market him instead. So there you go.
Yep. So let's go through a little bit of a standings update. We haven't done that in a hot minute. start in the American League, where the Yankees do still hold a 10-game lead in the AL East over Tampa Bay and Toronto, despite their recent struggles. But are we certain that the Yankees are going to win this division? Because, quite frankly, I'm not 100% sure. I'm probably still 99% sure. But there's a little bit of doubt creeping in because the Yankees just can't seem to win.
I mean, they're playing the second place team right now, and I don't think it's going too good.
No, it's not.
The Yankees got a run back. It's 3-1.
Was it an Aaron Judge home run? That'd be nice.
I don't know. Andujar drives in a run, it says on the highlight down here.
Boo.
So, but you can't play like crap for months now and, be like, oh, well, they're just going to cruise to the East Championship like that.
Yeah, no, I mean, they are now in their second month of bad baseball.
Yeah.
Like, it's not good. It is not good.
And I put this in here mainly because bigger leads have been blown with less time than this.
There have been.
Right? Like, there's, the Red Sox, they were up 12 and a half games or something with like 3 weeks left and just fell apart.
I know they were up by like 4 games with a week left or something like that, and they blew it.
Yeah, they kept losing to the Orioles, who were terrible. But it's a long season, and it's a long season in the sense that you have to be good almost the whole time. Like, you can't really have any lulls, otherwise somebody might catch you.
Yeah, certainly not this
maybe,
long of one.
Yeah, maybe Tampa Bay and Toronto aren't those type teams, but, if they were, then this is not looking good.
So this week, Aaron Judge was asked about, their recent struggles, and he basically responded, if you had told any of us at the beginning of the season that we were signing up to have a 10-game lead in the middle of August, like every single one of us would have signed up for that. And yeah, but that doesn't mean that we can't be a little concerned and not feel too great about what we're doing lately, because y'all had a bigger lead.
Mm-hmm.
Y'all had a much bigger lead just 5 weeks ago.
Y'all had the best record in baseball, and now you don't even have the best record in the American League.
Yeah, the Astros now have a 2.5-game lead over the Yankees, and the Dodgers have more than that.
There's a legitimate question about, do I think the Yankees are going to blow this division lead? No, I do not. Do I think that this is concerning for their prospects in the postseason when they have to go head-to-head against Houston?
Absolutely.
Of course it is, because Houston looks like a really good team, and for the better part of 2 months, the Yankees look like a bad team. Not even just like not quite as good as we thought. Legitimately a bad team right now. And bad teams, I know that the playoffs are a crapshoot. Teams that are playing badly don't win pennants. It doesn't happen.
No, you don't get that lucky in multiple games of a series. So we'll see what happens with the Yankees. But right now, any sort of confidence for their performance in the playoffs is nil. The Guardians lead the American League Central by 2 games over Minnesota and the Chicago White Sox. Any thoughts on that division race? You guys think that's going to kind of hold up, or do you guys think that the Twins or the White Sox could take that away?
I don't know.
I don't particularly care, I guess. I still stand by it.
I still
think
the White Sox are the best team in that division, too. Yeah, Evan and I are on the same page there.
If your boy Tim Anderson can stay on the field, not getting suspended 3 times and then getting hurt.
Yeah, he's been suspended 3 times and now he's hurt. It's unbelievable. Just torpedoed my fantasy season, thanks to Tim Anderson. The White Sox should win, but, none of the teams in either Central Division are particularly good, so...
Yeah. In the West, the Astros have a 12-game lead over Seattle, so I think we all feel pretty confident that they are going to win that division.
Yes.
But Seattle is currently the number 1 team out of the wild card teams, and I believe I had Seattle in the playoffs.
Ooh.
I'm just saying.
Corey, could I stop you for a second?
Yeah.
The Orioles have tied it up. Mullins homered to right center, and Rutschman homered to right, so it's 2-2.
Back-to-back jacks. I like it.
Yes,
Very nice.
like a minute apart on the ESPN alert.
So let's jump back to patting myself on the back because you guys were still teasing me well into the season for picking Seattle to be in the playoffs, but they are currently half a game up on the last wild card spot.
Well, I think that there's something to be said about getting to play Chris Woodward's team 19 times a year because they just kept beating the Rangers. Like every time the Rangers played them, it's 3-0, 3-0. I mean, the Orioles beat the Rangers every time they played them too. So
Literally every time.
like the Mariners had a stretch where they won, I think, 15 games in a row. That's what really got them back into the wild card mix. And I swear 6 of them were against the Rangers. And then
Okay, it's not my fault that you didn't take into consideration that they would get to play 19 games against Texas.
I figured the Rangers, with their $500 million they spent on free agents, would actually be able to win some games against a mediocre team. But
I did not think the Rangers
But
were going to be good
I
this year.
still will say, I don't believe in the Mariners as a realistic championship team. I think that because they were on this win streak, and then they play the Astros, and they get swept and badly, and then they get to play the Rangers again, and they sweep them. So it's just like they're kind of beating up on the crummy teams like the A's, like the
It's okay.
like
They
the
can still
Rangers.
make the playoffs
and
off of that.
and that's fair. That's how you get into the playoffs. By beating the bad teams, they just happen to have a lot more opportunities than, say, the Orioles, who have to play the Rays and the Blue Jays, and the best they get is the Red Sox, who are bad, but not that bad.
The second and third wild card teams in the AL right now are Tampa Bay and Toronto. We talked a little bit about them already. Your guys' Orioles are only a game and a half out. They are the first team out of the playoffs as it stands right now, and they are in striking distance.
If we keep beating the Blue Jays, we got a real shot to just cruise by them. So
Yep.
because we still got a gajillion games against them.
Oh, yeah.
And then the
a lot
other
of
two
good stuff.
teams who are in the hunt for a wild card are Minnesota and Chicago. We talked about them. They're both 2 games behind the Guardians in the Central. We've got a pretty decent race shaping up for the wild cards. There's 3 of them, but if you're gonna have this many teams who are all that close, I can live with having that extra wild card. Still don't love it, but I can live with it if we got this many teams who are all kind of in the same category. It's harder to differentiate between them. Looking over at the National League, in the East, the Mets have a 4.5 game lead over Atlanta. The Mets recently got Jacob deGrom back from the IL, and he has been very good. They haven't completely turned him loose. I think his last 2 starts they took him out of like 76 pitches or thereabouts. And I think his first start was only like 59, but he's gotten 3 starts under his belt. He's striking people out. He's not giving up runs, at least not multiple runs. The Mets are kind of, I think the Mets are back like firmly in the driver's seat of this division. I mean, they already were. I mean, the Mets have been great all season. But Atlanta was kind of creeping up a little bit and starting to make it interesting. But with a healthy deGrom pitching well, and you figure his pitch count is going to be able to increase a little bit more before we get to the playoffs. The Mets, I think, are going to safely win this division. What do you guys think?
I think the Mets are going to win this division. I do disagree with you on the use of the word safely, though, because like the Mets and the Braves, they play a bunch down the stretch. The Braves beat the Mets 13-1 last night, and then tonight the Braves are up 3-0 right now in the 4th inning. So I don't think it's over so much in this division, but I still think the Mets win. I think they're the better team, but the Braves are defending champions and still pretty good.
Yeah, and the thing is, recently the Braves have consistently caught up to the Mets, and then they would play a series, and the Mets would usually either win that series or just outright sweep it, and that would give them a little bit of distance. They came into this series up 5.5 games, but they lost last night, and it looks like they're on their way to another loss there. That's a 3.5 game lead with probably one more game in that series to go. If the Braves answer with a sweep, they're right there. So I don't want to count Atlanta out, but I do believe that between what the Mets have with their starting rotation, with Scherzer and with deGrom slowly coming back to form, along with the guys they have in that lineup, I think that they should win the division anyway. But with all the games they have still left to play against each other, it's definitely not over.
Scherzer has struggled just a little bit over his last 3 or 4 starts. Just saying. But you figure he's going to come back to form.
He's Max Scherzer.
Yeah.
You count on him being great because he is.
Yep.
I took a peek at the Braves schedule. They've got 6 more games against the Mets, including tonight, all in Atlanta.
I didn't get that. Could you try again?
What's that?
Eric's Apple Watch is listening to us and not doing a very good job of understanding what we're saying. I don't know why it does that. Like my watch does that sometimes too. When I'm when I'm coaching and I'm doing like 1,000-meter repeats with my guys, I'll like talk to them between reps, and all of a sudden my watch will turn on and be like, "Hey, like I didn't catch that."
Yeah, I think if you like look at it a certain way, it'll start recording stuff. And there's a whole paragraph on there about the Braves and the Mets that I clicked away from. So it was definitely picking up the conversation. I just had no idea what the hell to respond with.
Let's talk about the NL Central, where the St. Louis Cardinals still have a 2-game lead over the Milwaukee Brewers. I mean, both teams have been playing pretty good baseball for the most part. Not fantastic baseball, but they're playing pretty well.
I'm tired of the Centrals. I'm tired of both Centrals. Like
Yeah.
none of these teams feel like they're that good.
They're
so
not.
it's like
Seems
what
like
do
if
you do
you're
with them?
good, you need to be on one of the coasts.
Yeah,
That's like normal.
Yeah.
Like that's like America in general. Like
right.
flyover country is a thing.
Yeah.
Yes,
no,
we're
that's
being
fair.
haters. We are being haters. Looking at you,
We're
Mike
pro
Wilbon.
I-95.
Yeah, I-95 corridor and I guess the I-5 corridor, if you want to call it that.
Yeah.
They reign supreme. Sorry if you don't like it, but
Yep.
it's the way it is.
The Dodgers are running away with the NL West. The Padres are not a terrible team, but they are 17 games back. The Dodgers just are killing it. They are up by 6 games for the best National League and overall record over the Mets.
The Mets are ahead of the Yankees and the Astros right now.
Yes, they are. They sure are. In fact, the Mets are so far up on those teams that Atlanta, who is 4.5 games behind the Mets, they're 6.5 games up on the third wild card right now. They are very handily in the driver's seat of getting into the playoffs. The only question is whether they can catch the Mets or not. But talking about the other wild card teams, we got the Philadelphia Phillies, who are up half a game. This is the Philadelphia Phillies who fired Joe Girardi just a couple months ago, and they are the number 2 wild card. The what?
You called them the Philadelphia Feelies.
Oh, the Phillies.
That's getting written up.
I'm thinking about Jay Feely. He played for Philadelphia. Why not name a team after him? He's a pretty good kicker. San Diego has the 3rd wild card as it stands right now. Milwaukee is 2 games down on the wild card. It's looking like they might need to catch the Cardinals and win that division to make the playoffs, because you just don't know if that Central Division is going to get 2 teams. You could get a second team from the Central in both leagues, but you could just as easily not get one from either. And then the next team in the National League wild card race, they're 5.5 games back. That's the San Francisco Giants. The Giants were kind of an aberration last year, and they've been in the mix this year. But I mean, do either of you guys think that they can realistically make the playoffs? Because I don't think they're going to make it.
I think they're
No.
toast.
Yeah, that was
Yeah.
quick answer.
Don't-
Not
yeah.
too much more to it.
Don't need to respond further. I think they're done.
Fair enough. All right, so let's jump over to the last thing that we got to talk about, which is Eric and Evan. You guys went on yet another trip. You guys have been going all over the country. This time you were down in Tampa Bay. You went to the Islands of Adventure. You went to Busch Gardens, Tampa. Eric passed the 100 mark on his coaster count. Evan, I think, got up over 190, if I remember correctly.
187.
187. Okay, so closing in on 190 and 200. And then you guys went to the Orioles game that you mentioned earlier at the Trop, DL Hall's debut. So talk a little bit about your adventure.
You go.
Oh, okay.
You are the premier roller coaster enthusiast on this show.
Oh, okay. Well, that's good to know, I guess. I had been wanting to go to Islands of Adventure for a long time, ever since they opened up Velocicoaster last summer. And I just couldn't quite figure out how to do it. So, I got a traveling partner this summer. So we've been going all over the place. And, I think we started talking about this trip back in like April, like around opening day. And I wanted to go down to Florida to see the Orioles, who I expected to be still terrible. I didn't think they would be any good when we finally went to Florida, but
Much less that you would get to see the debut of one of your top prospects.
yes, that was totally shocked. So we rode Velocicoaster, and it was amazing. I think it's my new number one coaster of all time.
Really?
Yes, it is that good.
Wow.
Like, it's a great ride if it's just sitting in a cornfield somewhere.
Eric,
like if there's
better than Fury?
Yeah.
Eric says no. Eric selects Fury number one.
I didn't like it better than Fury. I didn't like it better than Iron Gwazi either.
Didn't like it better than Iron Gwazi either.
That's right.
Oh my.
Yes,
Eric's eyes are bugging. Evan's eyes are bugging out of his skull at that.
I don't know what to say.
He can't believe that you have the unmitigated gall to say such an outrageous thing.
I mean, I really liked Velocicoaster. I thought it was really cool.
Is it your number 3?
No, it's my number 4. I have the Ghost Rider ahead of it too.
Ooh, the Ghost Rider.
Oh,
Yeah, I do.
oh my.
I don't know if we can be friends
Takes are getting
anymore.
spicy.
I told you I've got some hot takes. Although I don't know if this is really a hot take. I feel like a lot of people.
It's not.
I don't
I
know.
feel like
Your guys' next car ride might be a little bit contentious.
No, I feel like a lot of people. I mean, it's really a thing of preference. Like, let me be clear. Velocicoaster is a great ride, and I even said it after the first ride. I said I feel like I need a little more time to get to know it. We only rode it 3 times, whereas these other rides, like Fury, we rode 67 times in the span of 3 days. We rode Iron Gwazi 6 times. We rode the Ghost Rider for 14 or 15
11.
times or something like that over the course of the 2 days. We ridden Nitro over 10 times. We've ridden Skyrush at this point probably close to 10 times total. So, obviously it's hard to marathon because fast passes are really expensive at Universal. And
They don't even apply to Velocicoaster either.
Yeah,
like,
you
you could
can't
buy
even-
Oh,
one.
you had to actually stand in the poor people line, right?
Yeah,
Which you broke ass.
Which broke asses, yeah. But like if I was ranking it based off of like how good of an attraction it is, which includes how quickly the lines move, the theming, the stuff that's happening in the lines, Velocicoaster is number 1. Like I think that all that stuff is great, and the coaster is great too. But I'm gonna grade it mostly, almost entirely based off of how good I thought the roller coaster was, and I thought that there were just a couple of moments on Velocicoaster where I just didn't feel the intensity, but there were certainly great elements to it. The Mosasaurus roll is just unbelievable. The second launch is incredible. Like, I could go on and on about how great the ride is, but if you're making me split hairs between these other rides that I really, really like too, and again, I could change my mind if I rode it another 4 or 5 times. Like, this is all fluid. So, but it was a great ride, and I'm glad Evan liked it as much. I got a little worried because the first time we rode it, we somehow scored back row seats, like randomly on our first ride of it, which, you got to be kidding me. How's this happening? And so we ride the ride, and Evan and I both get off the ride, and Evan's not saying anything. And I'm kind of nervous. I'm like, did Evan not like this ride? Because he's been like waiting for like 2 years to ride this thing, and he's not really saying anything. And then he finally says, I don't know how I feel about that ride. And I was like, oh, great. That's the same thing that Evan says about Intimidator 305, which we don't really like that much. I was like, oh, that's not great. And then I go on Instagram and I see Evan's story. It says, I think I might have found my new number 1. And I was like, oh, okay, so we really like the ride. That's good to hear.
Yeah, it was exceptional. I just think it has everything. I mean, even the first launch was a little weaker than the second one. Even the first launch is punchy. It has every element you can think of, I think, except for like a regular vertical loop, because that would just be too boring, I guess.
No loop to loop.
Oh God.
You ruined this flow.
Yeah, ruined. For me, the theming, I judge the rides based on the whole experience. Like the theming just adds to it. The queue line experience, the fact that the line moves, pretty good.
Well, hold on though, because if you're also including that as part of the experience, Evan, is that fair to rank it ahead of a lot of these other coasters that you use FastPass exclusively for. You never have to wait in the queue line for Fury.
Well, Fury doesn't have theming though. Like not anywhere near this. Like
it has theming. It has a band.
Yeah, that's not going to help the cause for Evan.
No. Playing the same 6 songs over and over for 2 days.
It could be the same 5 songs.
Ugh. Yeah, I don't know. I can't even remember what the songs were.
I remember all 6 of them, including the 7th one that they alternated between Mr. Brightside and I Want It That Way for the 7th song.
What was the one that was just for the moms out there?
My reference. We can make it 0.
Oh. Are you
Jimmy McGill?
Oh yeah.
I don't know what that is.
But yeah, the one for the moms out there is I forget what it's called. I think it's just called "She's So High Above Me," like above me.
That's the worst song.
Yeah, it's not.
That song's terrible.
It's not a very good song.
It's so bad.
Yeah.
But yeah, love Velocicoaster. Oh my goodness, the rock work in the first half, like you're just you go through like an Immelman or something. I don't even know what that element is. I think they qualified as an inversion, but like you go up that thing and then you dive right down into some rocks, and then there's a bunch of dinosaurs with teeth, snarling at you, and you keep dipping and turning, and there's a waterfall and there's trees. I was just blown away. And then in the second half, after the second launch, which gets you like 70 something miles an hour, you go up the huge top hat, just straight up in the air, and I felt airtime going upward, right? Like, maybe there's maybe a little trim brake or something, but I was floating out of my seat as we were going up. And then as we go over the top hat, I just feel like I'm getting yanked and just going to be thrown into the Atlantic Ocean, right? As we go down. It was unbelievable. And you can see the whole park from up there. Just spectacular. It had great airtime. A little bit of laterals in there. I mean, it's certainly not as intense as like a Sky Rush, for example. But for me, it's a really good ride, and then on top of that, it has the spectacular theming. Just a true 10 out of 10.
All right. Talk about Busch Gardens.
Ooh.
Well, so
Mr. Iron Gwazi.
My 100th ride was Iron Gwazi, which I've mentioned I really, really liked. I liked it more than Velocicoaster.
Yeah, you guys got up to the front of the line, and right then it broke down. You guys had to wait for that 100th ride.
Oh, it was brutal.
We were we're waiting.
How long did you guys have to wait?
Like 20 minutes.
Oh, that's not
It wasn't a big deal. It usually isn't. Usually it's some sensor trips, and they got to get some mechanic in there just to do some quick engineering to get it fixed, and they run a couple cycles and they're back in. I definitely agree that ride got a lot better as the day went on, as it got warmed up. Initially, it was still really good the first couple times we rode it. I think we were back row for that one too. And so I was like, okay, I could tell why this ride gets a lot of hype just based off of that. But I was like, I also want to ride it later when the track's a little more loosened up and the sun's been on it a little bit longer and get it really warmed up. And it was tremendous. I mean, it had intensity. The death roll was great. I think I still like the Mosasaurus roll better because that was just so cool, especially being over the water. But that was a great element. The consistent ejector airtime that you got on this thing was excellent. It had the intensity, and the thing is, like, a lot of times when rides like this just are tossing you out of your seat, like, you get a little bit of a hurt so good thing going on. But I was totally comfortable riding this ride. I wasn't, it wasn't like Sky Rush where I'm like, I'm gonna feel that one tomorrow because my thighs are gonna be all bruised up. But here it was really great. The ride was a little shorter than maybe I hoped. It was only about 58 seconds from the top of the lift hill to the brake run, but it was a lot of fun. Definitely worth riding over and over again. And I was a huge fan. And if that's the sort of the precursor, well, not precursor because it's newer, but if that's sort of the here's what you can expect sort of on Steel Vengeance, oh boy, that's gonna be a problem when I get on that ride because that sounds like it's gonna be nuts.
Yeah. Oh yeah, Steel Vengeance. I rode Steel Vengeance back in May, and I mean that thing it's something else. Like it's the same height, but it The airtime isn't as strong as Iron Gwazi, but there's much more of it. The first hill on Iron Gwazi after you go down the drop, that outer banked hill. Steel Vengeance has one of those as well, and it seems like the airtime is just sustained longer up there. You're just constantly being thrown out of your seat for 7 seconds straight. Steel Vengeance is a powerhouse in that regard.
Yeah, I was also a big fan. I got to ride Montu. A lot of people consider that the best B&M invert ride. I've ridden Banshee at Kings Island. I've ridden Afterburn at Carowinds. And I would say this was definitely the best one. I really liked on the loops. A lot of times I find vertical loops, especially even on inverted rides, I find them kind of boring. But when you got to the end of the loop, it really felt like the ride was yanking you down, and then would dive into these little tunnels and things like that. You could really feel the force on it, and that just added a little bit extra punch to it for me. And I was like, well, this is definitely the best one I've ridden of this style. So definitely a big fan of that one. I liked Kumba too. I didn't expect Kumba to be good. I didn't realize that ride was actually well liked. I just figured it was just some other ride that has been around for a while, so they kept it here. I rode that thing. That thing was great.
Oh yeah, love Kumba. It's a classic. I hope it sticks around longer. There was a rumor that it was going to be removed at some point soon. I think it opened in 1993 or so, and 30 years for a roller coaster. That's a long time, and especially since it's in a park that has year-round operations, that's a lot of mileage. And nothing lasts forever. But hopefully it sticks around a little bit longer because it's a really good ride. It's iconic, right? The interlocking corkscrews when you take that picture from right outside the queue line over that bridge. I mean, everybody has seen that picture. Even if they don't even know they've seen it, they've seen it. It's like I said, iconic. Eric, I want to hear what you thought of SheiKra, your first ever dive coaster.
Oh, I thought that was really exciting. I don't know how to feel in the sense of, I know that we're, the back row obviously for physics reasons always has the most force acting on it, so that's why we go for it. But for that particular ride, the dive element where it kind of hangs you there at the drop, I feel like we didn't necessarily get to experience that because we were in the back.
Yeah,
so we weren't really hanging over the edge. So I feel like I'd like to try that in the front row, but the rest of the ride was great. I had a lot of fun with it. You definitely got some speed out of it just because of that pretty much vertical drop. It was really cool. I appreciated the fact that I got to ride one of those because everyone was always saying about Hershey Park. After they update Wildcat and get an RMC in there, the only thing that Hershey Park needs is a dive coaster. And I just kept looking what the hell is a dive coaster? I don't even know what that means, and now I know what it means, and I'm like, okay, those are cool.
Yeah, I will say, I forget if it's if this particular, because I can't remember the name of the roller coaster, but it's either at King's Dominion or it's or maybe Carowinds, but it's one where you kind of hang and suspend off of the top, and then when you go down, you go under a pedestrian bridge.
I think you're talking about Griffin at Busch Gardens, Williamsburg.
No, is it Griffin? Because it's
no, it goes under a pedestrian bridge, and you hang at
and
the top.
It's not bird themed, right?
I mean, a griffin is a bird.
I know Griffin is a bird, but the ride is not bird themed, right?
It's themed to a bird. That's most of them are themed to birds.
I don't think this one had a bird theme to it, but in any case, I rode that whichever roller coaster it was. I rode it in the front row, and it definitely is really cool to because you're up front and you are the one who's hanging and seeing down, oh my god, I'm just pointing straight down.
Yeah, there's a lot of rides where the experience in the front, I'm not gonna say it's necessarily better, but I'm even Fury, which we rode a gajillion times, I'm glad I got to ride it a few times in the front just because it's a different experience.
Yeah.
Or the back row is clearly I think it's the best experience, but being the first car going down the drop, having just all that wind in your face because there's nothing obstructing you.
Yeah.
It's definitely something that you got to check out. as much as possible. Evan's buddy Blake decided to ride in the front row at Velocicoaster, and we were like, no, we're going to the back. And yeah, I do not regret that decision at all because those back row rides were great. But yeah, that was definitely a great time all around. We didn't quite kill Blake like we killed Sean, but I thought we were getting close a couple times.
Yeah, we wore Blake out.
No interest shown from Sean to go on another one of these adventures with you guys yet?
I don't think so, because I went on Facebook yesterday and I saw Sean's stand-up comedy set, and like half of it was about his trip to Hershey Park.
Oh, really?
And,
I
yes.
need to go and see
I
that.
gotta check this out then.
I haven't got a chance to watch it
Yeah.
yet. It sounds like
Like,
that's on my
oh,
to-do
no.
list for tonight.
Like, whoops, we might have overdid it on that one.
I don't think we did, but
Well, maybe he'll want to go so he can get more material.
it was unfortunate as we're just looping Sky Rush and Sean's sitting there on the bench outside there with a big Dunkin' Donuts coffee that he bought. I'm like, oh, Sean looks like an old man at the park or something like that. And
Yes.
Meanwhile, we're just
Needs a newspaper.
having fun, screaming. Evan's kicking his feet and smacking the lap bar because he's just had such a good time with like his greatest Sky Rush ride ever. And then Sean's just like,
Oh my God.
Sean was
Yes.
toast, man.
Yes, I had an out-of-body experience, right? Like, you know, my soul was yeeted into oblivion or something. It was, oh my God, that thing was just something else.
So a quick update on actual sports. The Orioles have taken a 3-2 lead on the Blue Jays.
Yes. Yeah.
I think that just about wraps up our
Well,
show.
I want
You guys want to talk
I
about
want
the
to hear
Trop?
what Eric has to say about Tropicana Field.
Yeah,
yeah.
do we stand for the Trop, or does just Evan stand for the Trop?
Little column A, little column B. I was very familiar with what the inside of the dome looked like, and I understood that it's not very aesthetically pleasing. The catwalks are an eyesore. The sort of the style of the big white, almost like circus tent looking dome. But I knew that going in. I'd seen enough Rays games on TV, and I understood that was the deal. But I thought that aside from the field and the atmosphere, as far as the visuals,
aesthetic, yeah.
I thought it was a great ballpark. Like, I thought that the concessions were obviously really modern, which surprised me because the stadium was built in the late 80s.
Yeah, I would not have expected that at all.
Yeah, like they had. It was almost like you were at the mall walking on the concourse. Like it was pretty nice. Everybody was super nice. Like Evan told me about that. The customer service was tremendous. Like I didn't consider it a bad place to see a ball game at all. Now I also didn't have to struggle with being a native of Tampa and the struggle to get to the stadium because I went once. Somebody else drove. I sat in the back and played 2048 or something like that. And next thing I knew, we were at the ballpark. And obviously, I had much appreciation for the fact that the game was held indoors, given the fact that it was hot as blazes outside, and I might have died had I had to sit in an outdoor stadium for that long in that kind of heat. So, like, there were... I get why people hate on it, because it's not very attractive, but it wasn't the worst experience I've ever had. Like, it was okay. Like, I would see a game there again. I wouldn't be clamoring to gotta go back to the Trop. That was such a beautiful ballpark. Obviously,
so stand might be a little strong of a word, but you don't hate the Trop.
That's right. I think that they understand the issue with it, and they make up for it in other ways to make it palatable. Like, I feel like places like Oakland probably don't do that because that place is a huge dump, but I feel like everybody just hates it, so they don't care. But it feels like they really want to make the atmosphere better, despite the fact that it's not a particularly great stadium.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people hate on the Trop just because they hear other people hating on it, but they haven't actually been there. I think it's a great place to watch the game. No blazing heat, no torrential downpour like you get every single day in Florida. It'd be nice if my 2 visits to the Trop, the Orioles had won the game. That would have made it a little better for me. But it's a great place to watch a ball game. It's comfy in there.
I will say the mascot race was disappointing.
That was
weak
bad.
sauce. Like they didn't run like you know how like the president's race for the Nats side. They kind of like they come out of like the right field bullpen area and they run all the way down pretty much to the dugout, and that's where the finish line is.
In the left field bullpen area.
Is this the left field? I thought it was.
It's right field.
And Nats Park.
They come out from center and they go around the warning track all the way down to like first base.
So maybe center. I knew it wasn't like because it's not just like a straight line down that they run. Like they do have to run around like
that's
half
what I'm
of the
saying.
thing.
They run around the warning track in fair territory and then come down the foul line. Anyway, it doesn't matter. The Rays mascot race was pretty much just like they were in left field and they ran to the foul line and finished at the left field foul line right by the foul pole. So they weren't really running very long. And I think one of the mascots ate it, or one of them pushed the other one over. I don't really remember. And that was kind of it. That was the end of the race. And this guy cooked them. And I was like, it could have been better.
Mm-hmm.
The Stingray tank was cool, though.
Yeah.
A couple of the Rays got a little pissed off at each other and started zooming around the tank. That was kind of cool.
Yeah, they're splashing and stuff, and little kids were screaming.
Yeah, and some guy asked me if I wanted to be on TV because there was a cameraman who was shooting for some B-roll, and he was shooting the Stingray tank where you can reach out and pet the stingrays as they go by. And he asked me if I wanted to be on TV, and I said sure. And he said, you got to go down to the Stingray tank right there, and you've got to don't look up at the camera, but you've got to pet a ray as they swim by. And I looked at him, I said, it sounds like a lot of work. And he was like. He was like, it's up to you. I was like, all right, well, I'm not doing it because I don't feel like doing that anyway. Plus, it would have been weird because there's like all kids, petting the Rays.
I don't care. Well, I went to the Maritime Center up in Connecticut. I went to the Baltimore Aquarium, and I don't care if it's mostly kids. I'll pet the ray.
Yeah,
I went and touched the jellyfish.
Especially because
we rode
the
Air Grover
really
the
cool.
previous day.
Yes.
Mostly kids. What are you talking about?
Yes, we rode Eric Grover, and the entire time I was like, why are we on this ride? I'm just doing it for the credit, but
gotta get the credit.
We do everything for the credit. That's what we live for, I guess. But
Yes,
but yeah,
Graham, we do it for the credit.
Yeah. Plus, I'm wearing a bright orange Orioles shirt too, so it's like I'm gonna stand out, and look like a total dumbass. Being the one guy with all these little kids petting a Ray. I'm not even from here. I just look ridiculous.
All right. Any other stuff to talk about from your guys' adventure, or are we ready to wrap up tonight's show?
Orioles lead 4-2 now.
And the flight sucked going down, but
It did?
the flight,
Oh, yeah, we
yes,
got
it did.
delayed and stuff.
Your boy almost had a.
You guys thought you were going to get delayed by like 4 hours or whatever.
Well, so we got ready to board. We were in Group C, and they boarded A1 through 30, and then in the middle of boarding, suddenly they say, we're not going anywhere for a while, so everybody got to get off the plane. So they deplaned the people that were already there, and then they proceeded to say, we'll give you an update at 5:15 what the status of this flight is. And the lady had to say it 3 times because I guess people were asking her about it. She got more and more crabby each time. But then at like 5:10, suddenly there's this mad dash for the gate. We didn't hear any announcement saying it's time to board. So they pile us onto the plane, and then the pilot's like, yeah, we're not going anywhere for a while. So we sat on the tarmac at the gate for like 90 minutes, just not going anywhere, despite the fact that they forced us to get on the plane. And I was just like, I also wasn't aware of whether or not, while the plane is grounded, am I allowed to use the lavatories, while they're sitting on the tarmac?
I'm pretty sure you're allowed to, but it's also like, you don't know when they're going to start. You're not really supposed to still be in there when you start.
Right.
To move.
So I said, okay, I'll wait till we take off. Well, we didn't take off for a while.
Not to mention, like, we're still in COVID. Like, do you really want to have all these people like scrunched together in a small cylindrical tunnel?
They didn't care about that. Clearly.
Apparently not.
So
I had my mask on. So.
I mean, I would have too, but still, like that
not great.
doesn't make me feel that much better when you're in that. Cramped,
So your boy's holding his waist for a long time, and then the flight takes off, and so I'm kind of like, my knees are starting to, come on, let's go. And so I'm waiting for the 10,000 feet cue. Bing. And I'm like, okay, cool. And they're like, but you have to stay in your seat because we're about to hit some turbulence. And I'm like, no, I'm going to the bathroom. Like, there's the plane's shaking. I'm like stumbling to the bathroom, like just like almost knocked into somebody. I grabbed the door as I was going by, and the two flight attendants that were sitting
Like
there.
in an action film.
Yeah, it looked like there was a hole in the plane and everything was being sucked out to balance it, and I'm just like, no. And so like I finally get there, and the flight attendants are like, be careful, and I'm like, lady, the hard part was getting here. I can sit on the toilet, I'll be fine. And so I sat in there for like 25 minutes until.
Oh, really?
Well, yeah, just until the plane stopped shaking, and then I was like, okay, I'm gonna go back to my seat. Because the kidneys were starting to scream at me for needing to go to the bathroom, so I had to go. And I would not be denied that trip to the bathroom.
Well, on that note, let's go ahead and wrap up the show.
I was just playing Mario Kart the whole time. I had no idea. Because it's like we didn't sit together because we were one of the last people to get on. I'm just playing Mario Kart, having a great time. And, I had no idea all this stuff was happening.
This has been episode 205 of the Sports Ballers podcast. We are 3 episodes into our 5th season of podcasting. So exciting stuff. We're going to be having our annual fantasy football preview show coming up either next week or the week after. We're going to figure out when makes the most sense for us to do that. If you made it this far into the show, make sure you hit that subscribe button. If you have not listened to us live on YouTube, you should totally do that today. We had, you may have heard we mentioned Alex Mayo was listening earlier and commenting on our show, and we'd love to have that fan interaction. So anytime you want to listen live, make sure you go to the Sports Ballers on YouTube, hit the subscribe button, hit the bell icon so that you know when we go live. Follow us on Twitter at SportsBallers18. Sometimes we may be a little bit late getting alerts out about having a show and the link and everything, but we always get it out before the show starts. And if you hit the bell icon on our Twitter page, then you'll also get a notification on Twitter when we post. So, and we try not to inundate people too much with posting. We mostly stick to show announcements. So, it shouldn't be too much of a hassle to have the bell icon on for that. You can also follow us individually. I'm at Corey Puffett. Eric is at Quagmire67. Evan is at Evan_Ash13. You can email us, thesportsballers@gmail.com. If you have any sort of mailbag questions, topics you'd like to hear our thoughts on, we're happy to take those, especially as we enter football season. That tends to be when we get the most mailbag questions. You can listen to our shows after the fact on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Amazon, and of course our shows stay up forever on YouTube, so you can catch it there. You can also find our blog, thesportsballers.com. Little bit of a redesign on our blog from previous years. Some of the old posts probably are not going to look as good right now, but the ones going forward will be kept up with the new style of the blog. Any shout outs from you guys before we get out of here?
Yes, I got some. Let's see. So shout out to my friend Blake Breadbender for chauffeuring us around for 3 days in Florida with all the traffic, and getting up early and, driving to pick us up and stuff and putting up with us not being ready when he got there and whatnot. And of course, shout out to all the employees of all the places we went to. Universal was great. Busch Gardens was great. And then everybody, just want to underscore this, everybody was so friendly at Tropicana Field, right? Like, of course, everybody's old because it's St. Petersburg. But everybody's just like, hi, how are you? Great to have you here. Welcome to Tropicana Field. Like, it's, oh, my goodness, right? Like, everybody's just so nice. Like it's amazing. It's the diametrical opposite of Six Flags America, customer service wise, where nobody's happy to be there at all.
Eric.
Shout out to everybody involved with the production of Better Call Saul. The show had their series finale air yesterday. It's a bittersweet thing. I thought the show was tremendous. I thought the finale was very good. But obviously I'm very sad that it's over. It's really been... Obviously I didn't get into this universe of TV shows until around 2014. But for those that got in right at the ground floor, it's been 14 years since Breaking Bad started. Mm-hmm. And for those of us that streamed it on Netflix after it finished, we've been watching Better Call Saul since it aired.
Yes.
Like in 2015. So it's been almost 8 years for us as well, along this journey with these characters that some of which we didn't know existed from Breaking Bad, but we were like, we can't imagine life without them sometimes.
Yeah.
Just an incredible job by everybody involved. The acting is great. The writing is great. The cinematography
has been top notch through Breaking Bad. I mean, that's one thing that, as slow as the first season and change of Breaking Bad can be at times, the cinematography from the get-go was amazing.
Yeah, like I watch a decent amount of TV. I keep up with a lot of the new shows, and for the last 8 years, really, since it started, Better Call Saul has been decisively the best show on TV. So, gonna miss it, but again, don't cry because it's over, smile because it happened. So, great job by them.
And please don't send any spoilers to me. So, I've been dying to watch all the episodes since the mid-season break, and I've been tempted at times, but Rashawn and I are watching through the whole series. We're in the middle of season 4, so we're getting there. We are getting there. But I decided that I would wait and experience those last few episodes with her. So, I enjoy being able to go back through and, I kind of have an idea of what's about to happen, or I remember what's about to happen, and I get to look for her reaction, and that's fun. But I'm looking forward to being able to experience those last few episodes for the first time along with her. So my shout out is also a little bit of kind of a really cool announcement that I just found out about yesterday. But I am being inducted into DeMatha's Hall of Fame, which is a really cool honor. And even cooler than that, I get to go in with Elijah Brooks. He's being inducted. I get to go in with Vaughn Holsey, who's being inducted as as a teacher. And I get to go in with the 2006 basketball team, Mike Jones, his national championship team. So to be able to go in with the football coach when I started as a teacher, the basketball coach when I started as a teacher, two of my favorite guys that I've gotten to kind of interact with as a fellow coach. It's different cross country versus basketball and football. Obviously, they're hugely different, but the two of them were they are two of the best people that I've been around at DeMatha. There's a handful of really top-notch people at the school that I could go through, but they are two of the best ones. And I was sad when Elijah left. Obviously excited for him to have an opportunity to coach the running backs at Maryland. I'm sad that Mike Jones is gone. Thrilled that he gets to be a coach with Virginia Tech and kind of take that next step. I know that's something that he had been offered for a long time to coach at the college level and kept turning it down and finally just couldn't. But to be able to go in with them is going to be really special. But so my shout out is to the selection committee who deemed me worthy of that recognition. I mean, I can't really think of a higher honor than to be inducted into a Hall of Fame, and to be inducted into DeMatha's Hall of Fame is really cool. So I'm excited about that, thankful for that, and looking forward to celebrating that. So the induction is going to be on Sunday, October 30th. It's the day after our cross-country championship, so I'm hoping that I can also be able to say during my speech that we won our first title since my freshman year of high school.
Well, if you win that title, you need to walk into your induction ceremony with the trophy in hand.
I might just do that.
I was like, this is why you boys in the Hoff. Don't you forget it.
So there'll be tickets available for the event if people want to purchase tickets to that. And if nothing else, we'll record all of the speeches, including mine, and we'll put it up on the DM Stags TV YouTube channel. But that's a really cool honor. I'm looking forward to that
nice.
Quite a bit.
So for all you listeners out there, Corey's kind of a big deal. People know him. So you're gonna have to prepare. How long are you gonna go on your speech?
We're limited to 4 minutes. So
4 minutes.
So if we pass the 4 minute threshold, they begin softly but firmly playing Beethoven's Ninth Symphony.
Oh, so they walk you off.
Us
they play you off, yeah.
Yeah, they play you off.
The
They're like, okay, time to wrap it up.
That's cool.
Which is fine.
That's very Hollywood.
Well, it's very NFL. I mean, the NFL isn't quite doing that, but they are starting to cut down on their times. You used to be able to go for 30 minutes if you wanted to, and the same thing with DeMatha. But they've been like, you know what? We need to keep it moving.
Yeah, that's fair.
So no, it's I'm really excited. It's something. I mean, they only do the induction every other year at DeMatha, and this is 3 years removed from the last one because of COVID. So yeah, no, really really cool stuff, and really you know, hard to put into words, like just how
Well, you're
much
gonna
that
have
means
to in a
to me.
couple
But
months,
I am
so
going to
you
have
gotta
to in a
figure it
couple
out.
months. I have some time. So that will wrap up today's show. This has been episode 205 of the Sports Ballers podcast. You know, subscribe and do all the liking and following on all the places I mentioned earlier. And we will see you guys again next week with another show. It may be our fantasy preview show. If not, it'll be the following week. But in the meantime, take care, stay safe, stay healthy, and we'll see you next time.